The true story of how one woman made millions selling children. Between 1924 and 1950, a woman named Georgia Tann abducted and separated more than 5,000 children from their parents, many of whom were poor and unwed mothers. During her time working at the Tennessee Children's Home Society, she and her network of social workers would search for children. With the help of political friends, Tann was able to legally separate parents from their children by citing neglect. The most attractive children were sold to wealthy families, including celebrities. Tann looked like a grandmother, acted like a saint, and few families had any idea that she was actually a literal baby farmer, spending more than 25 years kidnapping children and profiting off the poor. And here's how she did it. In 1913, Georgia Tann graduated from Martha Washington College in Virginia with a degree in music. She was a teacher for a brief time before committing to a career in social work. Tann started working for the Tennessee Children's Home Society in 1924. It wasn't long before she realized that babies could mean big business. Taking advantage of her father's role as judge of the Mississippi Second Chancery District Court and the absence of laws regarding adoption, Tann developed a marketing strategy and paid for ads in newspapers to entice prospective parents. In one advertisement that she placed around the holidays, angelic blonde babies looked up beamingly as the words "Want a real live Christmas present?" lured in potential parents desperate for a child. In another ad from 1935, an adorable little boy holds a ball. The caption reads, "Yours for the asking. George wants to play catch, but he needs a daddy to complete the team." Then, under Tann's directive, children were abducted from the streets, daycare centers, and even churches. She and her operatives took kids born to mothers serving time in prison or placed in mental hospitals. Others were stolen from the hospitals shortly after they were born. Doctors, nurses, and other social workers were in on Tann's operation together, whisking the infants off before anyone noticed. Some doctors would even take bribes to tell new parents that their babies had died at birth. Their real identities were kept secret and records were falsified. Huge celebrities at the time used Tann's services to adopt children without even knowing that they were doing anything illegal. Actress Joan Crawford adopted 5 children. Actors June Allison and Dick Powell also adopted a child from the society, as did actresses Lana Turner and Mary Pickford, writer Pearl S. Buck, and New York Governor Herbert Lehman. Even weirder, professional wrestler Ric Flair, who was born in Memphis in 1949, was reportedly one of the many children Tann had snatched from unsuspecting birth parents. Hundreds of unwanted and unadoptable children died under Tann's care, often due to neglect and starvation. Some children were bought by adults to serve as farmhands or domestic servants, and others were neglected by their new families, endured beatings, starvation, and worse. Again, Tann placed an estimated 5,000 children into new families over the course of her career. She outright stole some of them, kidnapped others, and persuaded some parents to relinquish their kids. During adoption proceedings, Tann worked with Judge Camille Kelly, whom she paid off so parents had a difficult time getting their children back. Even though mothers and fathers went to the police, they were often poorly educated and didn't have a lot of money. They struggled to go up against Tann, who was wealthy and had a lot of powerful and intimidating connections in the legal and political systems. A woman named Alma Sipple gave birth to a daughter named Irma in Memphis, Tennessee on August 27, 1945. Her boyfriend, Julius John Talos, worked in the Air Force and had recently shipped out to Panama. 6 weeks after Sipple settled into her one-bedroom apartment, she was visited by Tann, who claimed she was checking in on a neighbor who was purportedly abusing a child. Tann returned the next day and noticed Irma had a cold. She offered to take the baby to the hospital because Sipple couldn't afford a doctor. Sipple agreed and tried to visit her baby the next day, but when she tried to see her child, she was told Irma belonged to the Children's Home Society. Then just a few days later, Tann told her Irma died of pneumonia. Sipple attempted to arrange a funeral, but Tann claimed she already took care of it. Sipple had no idea that Irma was alive and adopted by a couple in Cincinnati. They renamed her Sandra. But the story doesn't end there and gets even stranger. Decades later, in December 1989, Sipple was watching Unsolved Mysteries when she saw a segment about Georgia Tann. The show recommended that viewers who had run-ins with Tann reach out to the group Tennessee's Right to Know, who would help families reunite with their children who were kidnapped and adopted out. Sipple and Irma/Sandra were reunited 7 months later, 44 years after the baby was stolen from her mother. Shockingly, Tann was praised for the work she performed. People at the time had no idea what a monster she was and thought she was actually performing works of charity for these children. The media at the time praised her as, quote, the foremost leading light in adoption laws. Eleanor Roosevelt even consulted with Tann over child welfare, and President Truman asked her to attend his inauguration. To many, Georgia Tann was a saint. By the late 1940s, cracks began to appear in her operation. The then Tennessee governor tasked attorney Robert L. Taylor with investigating Georgia Tann and Judge Camille Kelly. What Taylor found was hard to believe. When he visited Tann's orphanage, Taylor noted, quote, her babies died like flies. Taylor also speculated that Tann made more than $1 million selling children. It was common for the kids to be transported out of state at night to meet their adoptive parents, with many of the children going to California and New York. In 1950, the governor of Tennessee held a press conference informing the public of Tann's crimes. But just days after announcing the case against her, Tann died from uterine cancer at the age of 59. The charges, which did not include kidnapping, rather they focused on her stealing money from a state-funded organization, were dropped. The judge she worked with, Camille Kelly, resigned after the investigation and passed away in 1954. The Children's Home Society shut down permanently. Tann didn't leave any of her fortune to any charitable organizations, and most of the children she placed in adoptive homes were never reunited with their biological families. And no effort was made to reconnect parents with their children.